Thank you for downloading this podcast from policyreview.tv.
Hello, I'm Namrata, founder and coach at Life Beyond Motherhood, and welcome to Aparajita, the Invincible Woman. We are going to be sharing a best practice case study for the diversity initiative at GenPact. I'm going to allow Sonali to introduce herself and to also talk about the India scenario for those of you who may not be familiar, and also talk about GenPact as an organization, post which I will be talking more about the diversity initiative. All right.
Hi, my name is Sonali. I work in an organization called GenPact, and I'll talk more about GenPact in the slide later. I'm one of those women in India who's pursuing a very, very aggressive career, while the scenario in India is quite different. If I look at way back in previous generation, my mom had 2 kids and she was never allowed. I mean, she could never work because she had the responsibility of her children. But scenario in India is gradually changing now. And if you look at the slide, you'll see that women at the top level positions in legislative or in corporate level senior positions, the representation is pretty low. Women scenario in India is different in a way because the social structure is very different. Women, though they have aspirations to pursue high careers, they have dreams, but they have to quit jobs once they get married and they have children. And it's not that they don't have aspirations, but women tend to quit once they reach higher. Organizations are embracing a lot of changes in terms of the family care support options, but the reality is 48% of the organizations, they still do not have the family care support options. And of course, India's economic output could be as high as 60% if more and more women, they aspire, they get the support, and they represent in the senior leadership positions. GenPact is an India-based organization. We boast of a high employee database of about 70,000 employees. We serve about 800 plus clients, and those clients could be from banking, insurance, healthcare, collections. We have a diversity of about 37% women employees. We operate in about 30 different languages, and we have about 70 delivery centers and 18 delivery countries. We recently got 11 awards, Brandon Hall Awards, and Brandon Hall Awards is like the Academy Award. They recognize GenPact's efforts in the world-class learning and development programs. With that, I would hand it over to Namrata.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to be talking a bit about what's different about Aparajita. Since morning we've been hearing, at least the ones who were in the last room where we've been talking about organizational imperatives and how initiatives have been driven. The way I think most organizations tend to approach diversity, having worked in a few MNCs myself, is it's driven from the top and it's usually a number which is given. Let's put X number of women through this program and then get everyone to sign the acknowledgement that they have read and understood the sexual harassment policy, and that's all that there is in the name of diversity and inclusion. It's very few organizations who actually spend that kind of time and effort and resources in building an initiative which is ground up. And that's really how this initiative was built, and I will talk a bit about how that happened. If you look at, this is the current batch of women who are currently going through Aparajita. And the reason why they're represented in this manner is because each individual is our information point. We haven't necessarily come up with a program to say these women are going to attend X, Y, and Z modules. We started with these women. We got them to fill up a development form to understand what is it that they wanted to do, what were their gaps. And based on that, we arrived at program objectives. If you see the key objectives, they are to do with providing a conducive environment, which talks about the culture that we've been hearing since morning. It talks about helping women create a strong personal brand. It is a very big thing in India, for women not naturally being okay about creating visibility for themselves, about asking for recognition, and hence that's a key one. To be able to equip them for larger roles, and they tend to shy away from even applying for roles. They may think, as you may have read in Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, They may think that they are not really fit for a role, and hence they may not even opt for them. Provide a forum for women to interact amongst themselves with a large organization that Sonali spoke about, 70,000 people spread across 20 countries, and within each country there are multiple cities. How do women even collaborate, even understand what's working for you, what's not working for you? So we need to be able to provide them with that platform and essentially help them develop into leaders who are role models. So this is really all about leadership. It is not about advocating women just because they're a different gender. It is to be able to do the right thing, to create the right kind of leadership that works for the organization. So how did we build this initiative? We started with putting a group of people through a one-day life balance workshop. Now the construct of the workshop was that it was a group coaching session. During the session, there were inputs which came in from participants. And we took all of those inputs and we said, okay, if we were to classify these inputs, what we really need to be able to do is we need to work on their intention, because many women don't even want to continue in the organization beyond a certain point in time, which is a cause for concern. We need to find a way of being able to influence the environment and culture, because they are not getting the kind of support from their supervisors. If a woman wants to leave early to go home because she has a baby, her supervisor is not very happy about it, and how do they kind of then impact the performance systems that eventually lead women to leave? We need to be able to do some work in the area of learning and development. In India, again, from a cultural standpoint, women find it very difficult to say no. If somebody comes and says, can you do this, you have to be nice and says, yes, of course, I will. And you're totally stressed about it and you're really not able to do anything. So how do we get women to understand that it is a skill, it is okay in a professional environment to be able to do that? How do you negotiate your way up the ladder? How do you negotiate a better salary? Policies and processes. When we did our research, and in fact in one of the sessions today morning, someone said that if I do a good survey on your organization to understand how robust are your policies, I'm sure I'll get the answer that they are very, very good. The issue is always in terms of implementation. What we found similarly in GenPAC is that when it comes to returning mothers, women were not getting the kind of support that they needed. And that's really what was causing the leaking pipeline. Women were leaving after having children, primarily because when they came back, the managers were not supporting the kind of roles they needed. They were not, while the flexi work policy exists, but the managers don't think that's something that they're okay with. So how do we really get all of these elements together? So we actually created a team which had leaders for each of these work streams. So there was someone who was in the business leadership team, apart from driving their account agenda. They were driving environment and culture related initiatives. There was somebody who was driving policies and processes, and each of these had sub-teams. So there were people they garnered from within the organization who were working on specific projects and tasks. So to give you an example, in environment and culture, we have now created something called the 3 Commandments. So we've identified what does it take to have a diversity-conscious culture. We have been able to roll out an employee assistance helpline. So all these have been different projects led by different people, but essentially all kind of come together in the form of a governance structure, which is driven by the business leader, who in fact today won an award. The intention is what I'd like to spend some time on, and this is not something that many organizations do a really good job at. We realize that it's something that we need to be using as our starting point. Are you all familiar with coaching and how it is different from counseling and therapy and consulting? Okay. So we actually took a risk, and I'm going to be talking about that a bit later. The organization had never really invested in coaching its middle-level managers. And we said that the women in this particular project really need to undergo a change in their thinking, in their mindset. And 20% of the budget for this entire initiative was actually allocated towards working on just the intention bit through coaching. So imagine if you're all the participants of the program, each of you is aligned a coach who works with you on an individual basis over a set of 8 to 10 sessions. And the goals that you work on are not dictated by the organization. They are goals which you have yourself identified as something that you need to be better at based on your own self-awareness and on the feedback that has come to you. Now, all of this could not have happened if we had not driven the right kind of branding and communication in the organization. So that was a very strong part of just driving the agenda. It's not okay to just do it in pockets, especially because it was so geographically dispersed. We did make sure that there were lots of offline, online, real-time connects wherever possible. The result was a whole set of things which you see up here and many more, which we haven't been able to accommodate. We had web chats, we had micro sessions, so a 2-hour session on how do you say no. And that couldn't be over VC because there were participants from Australia, from the US, and we really need to get everybody together. We had gender sensitization sessions for the men because the women came back and said, okay, fine, you're doing all of this for us, but what about the men? So we chose to also do sessions for them. We actually also involve clients in discussions. So as of now, anytime a client comes in, this particular initiative is a key part of what is discussed as the organization's efforts towards diversity. We invited female role models from outside the organization who were known in the industry to come and give inspirational talks. And they were not always coaches or people from psychology background. They were just successful women who had been through a lot in their lives. And they had so much to share in terms of how did they really move forward. And that has really resonated well with participants. So if I were to share with you how the program really has grown, and I will talk about the impact in a bit, I'd like to use a sales funnel, which is typically used to grow a business. We started with awareness, which is essentially to understand what is it that women want and drive that kind of discussion in the organization. We went through elaboration to say, okay, if this is what you want at a high level, and it all started with just a talk on work-life balance is an issue, but what really came about was all of these initiatives which I've talked about. We got people to enroll, so there were people who came forward and said, we believe in this initiative, we would like to be a part of it, this is what I am passionate about and this is what I would like to drive. And what we found that very soon, people who were participating also started taking additional responsibilities and became champions. And I will shortly talk about a case study on this. Before we knew it, there were people who had emerged from outside of this initiative who we had never even gotten into the core team in the first place, who stood up and who started leading large-scale initiatives. So the case in point in this is the topmost issue that came up in the workshops that we ran for women was relating to health and fitness. Women said, we do not get time to focus on ourselves and we do not know what to do. So there is this one person, a male, a senior leader in the organization who's very, very interested in fitness. He chose to set it up as a separate initiative. It is now run independently of the diversity initiative because it has gathered so much momentum and there are men and women who are both part of the agenda. But it all happened only because we highlighted that the common need that had been shared by women in the workshops was that of health and fitness. What's really happening now, if you see, is that the initiative is really growing. It has kind of reached a stage where it has a life of its own. There are people who are in it, who are driving it, who are outside it, but essentially through various channels, internal and external social media, we have been able to create a buzz, and it's so much so that people from other businesses in the organizations and people who are employed on contract, they're not even employees, they've heard about the initiative and they come and talk to us, and I know they talk to Sonali all the time, saying, when can we sign up for this and what will it take for us to be a part of this? Because they understand that this is something which is impactful and
I just want to add to what Namrata said. The participants who are enrolled in this initiative, whom we are imparting training, the high potential women of the vertical, and we get a feedback that we see a very visible change in these women in terms of reaching out, in terms of their confidence, because the coaching and the learning and development plan has really helped.
Right, and we will talk about that impact in a minute. These are some glimpses just to give you a picture of what's really going on. This is a session happening over a video conference, so there are different cities that are engaged. This is a classroom session. That is the cycle marathon, which was part of the whole health initiative that kind of emerged. And you see the business leader himself is up there, and there are lots of senior leaders in the cycle marathon. It's not just like some people who come together. It's all
yoga session.
Sorry?
Yoga session.
Yoga session. So this was a residential retreat, and because we realized that the topmost issue women had was to do with health and fitness, we integrated health and fitness into the boot camp. And it was again very well appreciated. This was the early morning start to the day, post which there were sessions which were scheduled on negotiation and presentation. This is a coach who was flown in from the US. She has taken a session for women participants. This is a series of stories which we started sharing. This is my story. Each woman who had gone through this program sharing testimonials on what is it that's working for her. This is a snapshot of the intranet. That is a very interesting street play which was put together by employees on their own without anybody saying anything, because they just felt so connected with the agenda. And there were a bunch of people who are theatre enthusiasts. They got together and they directed the whole thing, including the dialogue, and there was music in it, and there were costumes. And they went around different offices, creating that kind of sensitization to drive the message home that this is really what you would like to do. So what's the impact at the end of all of this? We do a lot of things, but what really happens from a business standpoint? We started with one business of about 3,000 people, and as of now, we've already got 2 more businesses, so it's now reached 3 businesses that are replicating the overall initiative. So the number of people who were earlier impacted has grown to 10,000 within just a span of 1.5 years. 46% of women participants have already moved to larger roles or higher levels, and we've got data to back that up. About 45 women program participants initially, and we have now covered over 850 women, and we are still counting. We've covered 2 cities in India, and that was the first phase when we just rolled out, to now we are now rolling this out in 7 cities across India, Australia, and Philippines. The business leader has won the Will Women's Choice Award. This was in India. Today was the second award, and it's already been showcased as a best practice in national and international women's studies. So what's been our key learning at the end of all of this? If you were to just take a step back, reflect, what should we be doing if you have to roll out a diversity initiative at a large level? I think the first point is to be able to listen. Just listen to people around to understand what is it that they really want. Engage them. The moment we started engaging the participants themselves in designing the program, we found that it was so much more relevant than somebody sitting in another office saying, let's do this for a woman. Innovation is very critical, and in this case we essentially looked at coaching as the innovator which came in, which we tried for the first time. There was a risk element, but the reward was huge. Reward. We've actually started now rewards which are relating to diversity. So we are encouraging the right kind of behaviors by instituting special awards for men and women who demonstrate the right kind of behaviors that we want them to from a diversity standpoint. And advocate. So talk about it, talk more about it in the organization. Tell people to go and tell other people and to talk to more people. If something is working, let's spread it, and that's really how it will grow. So the recipe for success: heat up an idea, which obviously makes sense from an organization standpoint. Take action, very critical. Stop talking. Stop making presentations, stop making models, stop discussing. Just take action. Mix it up with desire and belief. You have to believe that it would work. If we approach it from the point of view, I don't know, somebody's told me we have budgets we need to spend. It's not going to work. We have to believe it. And then add a dash of persistence. Diversity initiatives take time to show results. And if we get impatient saying, oh, I can't see the change in attrition, I can't see this and that, we will just lose half the value. So we just need to be persistent and do that. So that's really a quick thing to share. Is a couple of videos we'd like to share from the participants themselves.
I feel that I personally have gone through an internal journey, and I'm more sensitive in dealing with people, be it female employees, be it male employees. I'm able to understand the perspective of the other gender, I think, much more, in a much more better way than what I previously used to. I feel that I personally have gone through an internal journey, and I'm more sensitive in dealing with people, be it female employees, be it male employees. I'm able to. For me, Aprajita happened just at the right time. 11 years in Genpact, a very successful career. My career was on an all-time high. I was traveling the world, getting my promotions on time. But still there was this feeling that, am I, doing the right thing? So this really gave me a sense of direction. The interventions are very powerful. Each and every intervention means a lot. The first one, My Life by Design, helped me prioritize what I wanted. 11 months in the program, I took up a new role and I'm enjoying every bit of it. For me, Aprajita happened just at the right time. 11.
So that's that. We'll be happy to take any questions, and we'll have a brochure as well of some key points we've shared today. Yes, please.
I gather from what you're describing that time and resources were allocated towards this initiative right from the start.
Yes.
Because this was happening during working time.
Yes.
You had coaching, so is finding those resources and time is the key point, isn't it? Because once you have those, anything can happen. But how did you find the time and resources? Who and how?
So, okay. So I can answer this question and maybe Namrata can add on to it. So it's a priority right now. So since it is being driven from the top, and it's a business initiative rather than an individual initiative, and a core team has been formed and the responsibilities have been divided. I think that has really helped. And of course, it is a stretch for us because it is over and above the core job that everybody else is doing. But it's a priority. And it is a part of our scorecard. So it automatically gets driven. Initially, it took us some time, but then now we have realized through a governance mechanism, through the responsibilities that everybody is taking and the passion which Namrata spoke about, that everybody has, it is now on an auto mode and is being driven. Mm-hmm. So everybody has found that time to drive it.
So GenPact has a central diversity team as well, which runs its own things, we do this across the board, just like most organizations do. But what's different for this business, which has now become a role model for all other businesses and the central diversity team, is that the business leader is committed to driving this. And the moment you have that from the top, resources will be allocated, people will make time, their account managers will commit to hiring targets, and there you go, half of the problem is solved. But if you have a senior leader who is just doing this for a check in the box, just because I'm supposed to be doing it, then forget it. I mean, we can do some bit of it, but the impact we're really not sure.
It is a part of everybody's appraisal, everybody's scorecard. There's a steering committee review that we have every month, wherein people talk about the progress that everybody has made. So there are 4 pillars in Aprajita, and Aprajita means a woman who is not defeated, the invincible women. And the pillars like policies and processes, branding and communication, the culture piece is owned by very, very senior leaders in the organization. They form a team under them, and they talk about the progress in the steering committee. So I think we're taking it very, very seriously, and so the results are here to show.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, you said that women don't like to say no when they're asked to do work and so on, and you said that you kind of help them to negotiate that. Could you just elaborate on that? Because it seems to me that here also it is sometimes the case, but more so I would imagine in India. It's a very strong cultural thing that's ingrained. How do you change that for the women and also for the men to accept those?
Yes. So a large part of this, when we dug deeper, was to do with the mindset. And it is so deeply ingrained in the script that we are fed as children. Okay, when somebody says you need to be doing this, you need to be the good girl, you need to, whatever, appease everyone, make everyone happy. But the moment we questioned people, and this happens through coaching, that is the power of coaching, which enables so much of self-introspection. When we got women thinking, they came back and said, you know what, you're right. I don't even think about it, but when I say a yes and I go back, it adds to my stress levels. And my manager is a pretty rational and understanding person, and let me try and say a no. And most of the time when they come back, they reported success. They've said that we tried it and it worked. So it's really about somebody showing them the mirror, and that's what coaching does, which is why we spend 20% of our budget on just that bit, on the introspection, the intention. And once we have that in place, they are really into the agenda. We don't need to tell them this is how you say a no, this is the format, and all of those things can happen. But it's really about what's in your mind, and if you can change that, we've really accomplished.
And add to that, we did something at my university about saying no, and simply giving women a leaflet with 20 different ways to say no politely but assertively, just sentences that they could just use was
That's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe we should connect.
Yes,
and
we
share that
should
as
like to
well.
have that
Yeah.
link.
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
avoid sorry. Right?
Yes.
So the first thing, you shouldn't be apologetic because otherwise you're repeating yourself into a hole.
Yes.
Women tend to feel guilty very soon. You know, how can I say no? How can I put my foot down?
Can I just clarify the coaching that's paid for by a company?
Yes, it is.
So it's not.
It is. In fact, we have a set of 8 sessions per individual which are paid for. And beyond that, some participants have chosen to extend the sessions because they found it so valuable, and even that has been paid by the company. So while the employee assistance helpline is available more for on-the-spot guidance or counseling I may need, and also available to the employees' families, by the way. That's just for a one-time thing, but on a sustained basis, and this is an expensive format to go with, the one-to-one coaching has really helped with that.
And how do the women qualify for it? Sorry.
They don't. It's on voluntary basis. So this program does not take into account performance, except that you shouldn't be the bottom rung. I mean, that's the only factor we put in. But if you're a woman, if you're at this career level, you can opt for it. However, we haven't forced it on anyone. We haven't said that everyone go through coaching, because that's really when coaching doesn't work. Only if you feel there is something you need to change, you truly need to make a difference, you should opt for it, and we have seen the results.
So there's an intent form that the women who want to apply for this program, they have to fill in. Suppose that they go through a panel round wherein, they would just ask them questions. They would just check, how genuinely are they really interested in the program and their coaching needs. And depending on that, we have shortlisted.
You mentioned that as part of your appraisals. What kind of behaviours do your employees have to demonstrate to your organisation?
Do you want to talk about it? I don't think we have specific criteria at the moment, but that's really now being built in, and the reward system that I was talking about, that's really driving the fact that there are some people we want to recognize who have demonstrated the behaviors that we want everyone to imbibe. So now there is an exercise which is underway to bring some changes in the performance model,
Yes.
so that those behaviors are repeatedly evaluated.
So, for example, what are certain behaviors that a gender-sensitive leader has to display? Okay, so some of those traits. So we have taken into account those behaviors, and in a reward structure and an appraisal model, we would inculcate those values in it, and that is how we do it. Plus, we are also trying to put in a diversity scorecard in place. So, for example, how many diverse hiring have we done? How many promotions that we did? How many percentage of them were women? Okay. So, some of those things we are trying to measure now and put a scorecard in place. So that actually measures the success.
So essentially, you are measuring the success of a single person. Is regarding
and
the
many
qualifications.
such single people.
Many such single people? Absolutely. So it is we are trying to measure the success of all business leaders. For example, they have handling XYZ account. So what is the diverse hiring that they did, promotions that they did, okay? How many women they took on bigger roles. So some of that impact we are trying to measure.
So I would like to invite Michael Holtier, who's been working in this space for a long time, to share his views. He's written a paper as well.
Yeah, should I stand up?
Whatever.
Sorry.
Otherwise, a good
Sorry,
no problem.
I've got to sit down. Stand up and sit between. My name is Michael Lassman, and I run an organisation called Quality Edge. And I met this organisation online just prior to coming to the conference, and my first asked me to share some of my experiences with them.
Yes, please.
So I run a project called Men in Management, and it just really resonated with so much of what Sonali you just said, which is about, it's great to empower, it's really important to empower women to say no, to be confident and to be able to get into these positions. But what happens to the original and the stereotypical hierarchical structures which are very male dominated, and particularly in male-led organisations or institutions. So whether it be at higher levels, obviously in FTSE top 100 companies we know is all bar one male-led, and we know that in services like police services, fire rescue services, very testosterone-based. And it's where testosterone had a place in the past, and men knew how to behave in their management structure and got themselves noticed and got themselves promoted as a result of it. And now they find that there are women who are challenging them, not from a testosterone base, and I should say other men challenging them in the normal hierarchical structures, that are actually seeing people pass them by, and then they're being managed by women, and a lot of men are really struggling with that. And some men are open and say, listen, I'm now managing women and I need some help in how I manage women, because the needs of to enable a woman to come possibly through me and past me is something that I should be doing as a manager within an organisation, and I need help in doing that. But likewise, or conversely, it's about how men who have seen women go past and then struggle by being managed by women. And the countless number of stories and examples I've got of how men actually prevent women from passing them, or when they get past them, make their lives very difficult as managers by being, let's face it, basically troublemakers on a team or in an organisation. And the more that we actually get to see that men need the help too. So this is what I would go alongside what you're doing. I think it's fantastic that an organisation is led by a man, the project is led by a man. And there's one organisation in this country, a large company, the FTSE 250, led by a woman, who's following a similar model, which is Mighty. And Mighty are doing very similar sorts of processes, but for all minority groups in management. So it's LGBT and BMER and women, and they offer support and training for people in their supply chain and the supply chain of their suppliers and so on. So what I would advocate for those of us that are in organisations, and I think higher education is another one that is very male-dominated right at the top, is that I suspect there are quite a lot of university people here. I mentioned Glean this morning, is that we actually work with men too. So whilst we're empowering women to take on the roles of management and accelerated growth through organisations, at the same time the men do need help, because particularly those who are slightly, shall we say, slightly older, whose behaviours, they grew up in an environment where the behaviour that they grew up with was a behaviour of promotion, notice and promotion, and is now a behaviour of notice and stay the same, if not demotion. And so I would advocate that as much as possible, and to work alongside these sorts of projects with the men as well as with the women. Is that okay? Is that what you wanted? I can give you, and if anybody wants any examples or some information, I can share with you afterwards as well. And it's a great honour to be on a platform with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I wanted to make sure that Michael shares his bit, because every time we get into a discussion in the organisation on we're doing this for the women, the first thing we hear back is
what is
about the men? What about the men? And while I say, oh well, this is right now only for the women, we are going to find ways of including men here and there, but we realize increasingly that the agenda is not about advocating a certain gender. The agenda always has to be in an organizational context that of building the right kind of role models from a leadership development standpoint. And the moment you take that pitch, especially with top leadership, which is not into this whole diversity and promoting women kind of a mindset, you would find that resources and budgets are getting allocated to this agenda, because leadership development is something which no organization would refute, and they would want to invest time and effort in it. Thanks a lot, Michael, for sharing.
And I could possibly add that actually, if you take a global leader like Richard Branson, who actually says that since Virgin brought women onto their board, their whole organisation has changed around to the better, and he accelerated women through middle and senior management to get onto the board, and has recognised now and acknowledges that has had to put in place through all the Virgin companies an accelerated programme for women to go through senior management. So they need a flow through for women onto the board, which because actually he took the model like the Norwegian model, which was to create positions for women, which was actually, and he put women on board who were actually would in other circumstances not really have been ready for that board position, so he took a big risk, and the benefits have been right through the whole of the Virgin companies, and he's written quite substantially about it, so it's worthwhile having some of his work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So our women participants are now engaging in group projects with other participants in the organization across the globe, where they're driving these kind of specific initiatives. There is one very interesting one on returning mothers. They're doing one project on job sharing. There is a separate project which is being driven for flexi work, and we're finding more and more that
a lot of new ideas coming in.
Yes.
So I think that is making the difference.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this podcast from PolicyReview.tv. For more details, go to www.policyreview.tv. Please note that this audio is subject to copyright and cannot be used by other broadcasters or for commercial gain.